The challenge is if you gained 15 minutes a day, will you do what you've always done with those 15 minutes? See, you've already admitted that you already have too much to do. You raised your hand, you kept it up. I asked you to repeat after me. You said you were going to make things possible. But you're already in the back of your mind thinking, gosh, I still have too much to do. So the challenge and the opportunity will give you 15 minutes. The opportunity, you'll have those. The challenge, will you fill those 15 minutes in with one of your action plans? Clap your hands if you're willing to commit to that. Now, I'm going to give you 15 things that I do. Every single one of these, I do. I shared with you that Jody and I had lunch with Rich. We had lunch with Tim. We talked back and forth with a lot of the folks from Lone Toolbox. I will admit to you that we started off with 90 tips. And Claire said, can you knock it down a little bit? So my commitment to you is I'm going to give you 15 that work. I'm going to give you 15 that work for me. A couple of you are going to see things and you're going to say, gosh, Jason, I do that, but not as consistently as I should. Others of you are going to say, gosh, I do that every day. And others of you are going to say, whoa, I don't do that, but that's one that I want to try. A little bit of coaching here. If I'm sharing one, if I'm talking about one that you already do, look at how I'm sharing that. That might be your key, your way of sharing it with somebody else back at your office, one of your staff, one of your friends, one of your colleagues. Or how many of you are involved in a volunteer organization, some kind of a community service? Could they use time management? Number one, remove distractions. Since the time that I've been talking, Greg Frost introduced me, I ran over, shook his hand, he left. How many of you have thought about something besides this presentation? Clap your hands. 180 interruptions per day come at you. That's from the USA Today newspaper. 180. Do you have a minute? My favorite, by the way. Someone calls, hey, do you have a minute? Do they ever want a minute? According to the New York Times earlier this year, multitasking is not the best way to go about things. Now, I don't know if anybody can agree with this one, but multitasking. Who's ever been on the phone with a client looking at an email from another client with a file on their desk right in front of them and wondered which person they were talking to? Have you ever read an email and listened to a voicemail at the same time and had to go back to one or the other? Remove distractions and focus on one thing. There's a lot of you in this room who have action plans. Not goals and not tiers, but action plans. Remove distractions and focus on one thing. There's a lot of you in this room who have action plans. Not goals and not tiers, but action plans that are going to require long periods of focused time. How are you going to get that? Well, remove distractions. I've got some targets for you. Target number one, the new email ding or alert. Now, every single one of these things that I give, I'm going to encourage you to try these for 5 days. For the next 5 days, if you have the new email, ding, you've got mail. Or that little transparency in the bottom right-hand corner of Outlook, turn that off for 5 days. Because what I want you to do is I want you to get in there, I want you to be able to focus on one thing. Number two, your internet and your mobile phone. If you commit to taking 30 minutes, to looking at a file, to reading Cialdini's book, to doing a time log for yourself for a day, turn off the internet so you don't just quickly check email. Have you ever said this to your family or friends? I'll be right back. I'm going to go check my email. Number three, tasks and calendar pop-ups. Most digital systems have some kind of a alarm me later. And here's the question that I have for the audience. Have you ever been alarmed at a good time? You know, you're just sitting there doing nothing, wondering, I wonder what I should do today. Ding! Oh, that reminds me, I got to call a client. No. In fact, if you take a couple days off, like you have today, and you jump back into your offices on Friday, like some of you might, the first time you launch Outlook, how many of you might have, clap if the answer is yes, how many of you might have a series of alarms and tasks show up in your little window right there? Don't clap your hands on this one, but some of you will hit dismiss all. Others of you, one at a time, will hit snooze, 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 snooze. Now, here's the issue with both of those. Number one, if you hit dismiss all, then all of a sudden all those things are gone and you have to remember those. Number two, if you hit snooze, it's going to come back and interrupt you again later. I get a lot of calls. We get a lot of calls in the office from people, and they'll read something that we wrote, or they might hear us speak, and they'll say, hey, Jason, can you help give me some ideas on how I can get organized? So we get them on the phone, and I always ask them, I said, well, give me a little bit of a scenario here. What are we dealing with? And they'll say things like, well, I went to your website and I printed out that article. I know I'm going to read it pretty soon. Or, well, when I'm working at my desk, I like to have all my papers there right in front of me so that I can see what I'm working on. Other people say, Jason, we're just a paper-rich environment. One client said, Jason, every time I get up to go to a meeting, all my colleagues put papers on my chair. Now, I don't know if this looks familiar to any of you. But what we need to do is we need to remove the distractions. If you have a bag from Lone Toolbox BP08 and you've been collecting papers and business cards and binders and business plans and all of those little goodies that you're going to go back home with, we cannot have that bag sit on the floor until the next business plan. What we need you to do is we need you to take that business plan paraphernalia and go through it. What are the materials that I'm going to refer to as reference? What are the materials that I'm going to act on that are action? If you just separated your desk into those two halves, this is all of my reference material, and these are all of my action reminders.